Okay, well, welcome everyone to session 1D at the Texas Conference on Digital Libraries. My name is Leah DeForest. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Communications Manager and OER Support Service Manager with Texas Digital Library. I'm also a member of the TCDL Planning Committee, and I'm so pleased to be your session moderator today. So some housekeeping here real quick. Texas Digital Library and the TCDL Planning Committee are dedicated to providing an experience for everyone that is free from all forms of harassment and inclusive of all people. So we ask that you all here today be considerate and respectful in speech and actions, attempt collaboration before conflict, refrain from demeaning, discriminatory, or harassing behavior in speech, and be mindful of your environment and your fellow participants. You're also welcome to read through our code of conduct, which is on the homepage of the conference site. So today's meeting will run about 90 minutes. Please feel free to take breaks as you need. I don't think we have a formal break worked in. So, and we recognize it is kind of the lunch hour. So please go ahead and take a break if you need to. We are recording today's session. And I do invite you all to say hello and chat and let us know where you're joining from. You can share any resources, links to things that you want, make comments throughout today's meeting. You're also encouraged to post your questions in the Q&A section, where you can vote on other questions that you'd like our speakers to answer. And I'll be watching for your questions in Q&A and chat and share them with our speakers today. So now on with the show. We're joined by TDL's OER ambassadors. And our first speaker today is Taylor Fairweather Leech from West Texas A&M. And Taylor, take it away.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Leah. So today we are all going to be discussing what's going on with OER at our different campuses. So everything looks and feels a little bit differently throughout our 5 different institutions. So for my brief 10 minutes, I'm going to set a timer so I don't go over. All right. So today I'm going to just discuss a few things that we've got going on at OER. Going on at our campus with OER. So right now, I have a lot of things, a lot of moving parts all over campus. We do have an OER working group established, which is comprised of both faculty, staff, and students. So we get some really neat, interesting perspectives regarding OER, what is OER to the campus, and all of those things. So that has really helped me shape what it is that WT needs as far as OER goes. So with the OER working group, we also have a lot of just grassroots, if you will. I mean, I have a lot of word of mouth going on with faculty. I've had the privilege of working with a handful of faculty who have decided to do away with their textbooks, and we've got to create these really great programs. So from that, it's just kind of started to spread. So I'll get emails and calls with questions about OER, and sometimes it leads to something else, or others it's just a curiosity, which I think is just as important. I've also had an opportunity to work with faculty writing OER grants on campus, and that has been such a great experience within that process. So that's been really exciting and really interesting to see how that goes on. And then again, just the general questions and interest in OER. I am currently working on getting a system put into place as far as a consultation form of sorts that will live on our OER LibGuide, so that if faculty have questions, they can just post those right into there, or they want to sit down and meet with me, that would be another avenue that they can take. So I hope that, or I look forward to getting that ready for our upcoming fall semesters. And then another thing I wanted to talk about was some of the marketing that I've done for OER here at WT. A while back when COVID first started, we all went working from home, so we had to get creative on how we were going to spread the news. And what I had done was created this affordable learning series, and they were essentially no more than 5 minutes at most, little clips that I tried to create them to keep them as brief as possible, to give a general overview of all of the different services we had here at the library for faculty to use. So that consisted of OER, our WT repository, our library reserves, and a few other things. And so from those short little videos, I had a lot of success because it was easy to watch. You know, faculty could get a brief clip, and then if they had questions, they could follow up. And it just kind of helped get more information out. And so that seemed to be such a success. And I need to now move those videos onto the LibGuide so that moving forward, faculty or any other users can come back and look at that. And then every year we host an annual faculty poster session where we're able to showcase our faculty's research. And it's a huge, huge event in the library. And this year I took the opportunity to do a little bit of marketing for OER. And when I say marketing, it's more of like an education, like, hey, this is OER. Are you interested? Come talk to me kind of thing. And so what I did was I would show you guys the digital graphic, but for whatever reason, it went poof on my computer this morning. So I'll just hopefully show you. And it's just a little magnet that I threw into into all the faculty's little goodie bags that we give all the presenters. And again, it's just another thing that they can stick somewhere, and hopefully if they've got questions, my contact info is on that, and then they can find me that way. I intend to do this for our repository as well and kind of keep a common theme so that they begin to associate OER and these things with the scholarly communications feel of the library. So those are just a few things that we've done. I've also had the opportunities to speak at faculty events about OER, what the services I can provide, some resources that are out there and things like that. And then check my time. Okay. And then on the horizon for WT, like I discussed about the consultation form, and then possibly establishing something more formal as far as an OER initiative goes. We have a formal mission in our OER working group, which I intend to continue pushing forward and get that OER working group more involved with our OER efforts on campus. And then with upcoming projects, the Open Education Network puts on a Making the Case workshop. And so with hopefully maybe our fellow ambassadors or myself, I will bring that workshop here to WT sooner rather than later. So that is something I'm very excited about. And I believe that will gain a lot of traction and some interest with our faculty. And hopefully much more to come with OER at WT. And I feel like I just blawed all that overall and talked so fast. So hopefully that all made sense. And if you have questions, please feel free to let me know.
It made sense to me, Taylor. It just shows how, well, first off, just how much is going on, you know, just so much is going on. And also just your enthusiasm for it is palpable. I really enjoyed hearing about it, and I love that magnet. I hope I get to steal one from you one day. Okay, well, thanks so much, Taylor. And our next speaker is another OER ambassador, Ashley Morrison, the Talker Open Education librarian at the University of Texas at Austin. We'll take it from here.
Thank you so much, Leah and Taylor. I really enjoyed hearing about all your initiatives. It's clear that there's a lot going on there, and it's all really exciting. As Leah mentioned, I'm Ashley Morrison. I'm the Talker Open Education librarian at UT Austin, and I'm going to share a little bit more about one thing in particular that I've been doing with outreach lately. which is a pilot that I conducted along with liaison librarians this spring, which was my second semester in this role. So that's a bit of context. And in my position, my charge is to work across campus to drive awareness and adoption of OER. And at an institution the size of UT Austin with about 55,000 students and more than 3,000 instructors, for me, the prospect of outreach felt kind of overwhelming there at the start, as I'm sure it is for a lot of you too. And I wondered how I could make meaningful progress introducing myself and making instructors aware of the support that I could offer when it's really just not feasible to send an email to everybody saying hi at once. So I thought about what it might look like to just focus on one department at a time with my proactive outreach and what I might learn about that department, what services they need, and how that could scale to more departments or just my general support levels for faculty. And simultaneously, I obviously hoped that it could influence OER adoption or creation in a targeted way. So I'm going to tell you about the path that I took to do this and what I learned in the process. So to identify which department I wanted to work with in the pilot, I asked our liaison librarians who support them directly to fill out a short Google survey. And in the survey, I asked questions about department size, class sizes, and generally how engaged and receptive the faculty typically are to new ideas. I also asked about whether or not they'd already had conversations about OER with anyone in the department, and if they were aware of any adoptions or high quality OER that could be a match for some of those courses. And finally, I wanted to know if they would be interested and available to work closely with me on a plan for outreach, since that liaison partnership is so critical to success with this pilot. And I set out to select just one department, but I ended up picking two that are pretty different, the math department and the Department of Spanish and Portuguese. They were both good candidates for this pilot because they have a big faculty and lots of high enrollment courses, and there were engaged and responsive contacts for us to start with in both of them. And in these cases, they also had one or more faculty who I would call OER champions, who we knew would be willing to speak on our behalf if asked. So after the departments were identified, I worked with the liaison librarians for each of those departments to develop a sort of action plan. And in the plan, we documented key relationships, opportunities for course conversions, high quality OER, and kind of the overall SWOT, or strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats associated with each of those. And that helped us identify some specific goals, which were very much learning based, because we know it's not realistic in most cases to convert big courses to OER just over the course of a semester. And in a pilot, learning based goals just felt pretty appropriate. So let's talk about each of those departments and how it went. We selected the Department of Spanish and Portuguese because its core courses for beginner and intermediate language learners collectively cover about 3,000 students each year. So while the individual classes aren't that big, there are dozens of each of them being taught each semester, and the curriculum is standardized among those because they're largely taught by graduate students and other assistant instructors. So we thought that was potentially a really ripe area for converting course materials to OER, and our long-term goals are definitely related to that. But what we found after selecting them, but before starting our outreach, was that their textbooks for all of those courses were actually custom developed by their own faculty, and they were already published commercially. So that felt a little bit discouraging, but we decided against dropping them from the pilot because this was ultimately meant to be a learning experiment and not some kind of quick win. One of the reasons that this department was so attractive for outreach is that there are already a lot of OER authors within it. Multiple faculty members there have created open materials, including interactive websites, lesson plans, and textbooks. So that was an indicator that the discipline was probably pretty receptive to the message of open education, and we definitely found that to be true throughout our conversations. So we set up a series of informal meetings with those OER authors, faculty who had strong library ties, and with their department chair. And what we found through those conversations with is that they were all really responsive and excited about the ways that the libraries can support their course materials needs, including OER, but also things like reserve services, purchasing electronic copies of their books when we can, all of that sort of thing. So I was really surprised to find that they weren't already aware of those options, to be honest, but the libraries do a lot, and that was our hook in. So the department chair immediately invited us to speak at a faculty meeting to share that message more broadly, including an introduction to OER and the support that I can offer. So while that meeting didn't result in any immediate requests for OER, I'm hopeful that over time it could materialize. And we also held meetings with several of the faculty members who authored commercial textbooks, including those customized language texts. And everyone we spoke with was really open to open and wished that they'd thought about that as an option when they were initially developing the content, because nobody likes charging the students for the materials. So we're kind of sowing the seeds to imagine what it could look like if they were able to take copyright back at some point, though I don't know how likely that is for the foreseeable future. And our outreach to the math department had some things in common with what we did for Spanish and Portuguese, but it also departs in some key ways. So anecdotally, we felt going into this that there was generally lower awareness and acceptance of OER among math faculty, and that proved true in some ways, but we did have a very, very engaged faculty champion who we knew would be willing to broker introductions or advocate for us as needed. And she also had some really helpful insider knowledge of existing points of confusion and interest in the department. So that's why we started the semester with a presentation to their instructional faculty on open licensing, a little bit of copyright, and how to share learning objects that those faculty have already created. So it was intended to be sort of a toe in the water to OER, like you've already made this thing, and now you can expand the impact of your work by applying an open license and distributing it. And we also hope that it might indirectly address one of the department's objections that we already knew about, which is that OER is not high quality, according to them. So if we could get them to see themselves as authors of OER, maybe their quality concerns would be mitigated a little bit in the long term. The other thing that we did pretty differently was that instead of general meetings with faculty, we did semi-structured interviews to learn more formally about their experiences with and perceptions of OER. And we did get IRB approval for that, and we intend to share our findings more broadly after the interviews officially conclude. But these interviews have served many needs for us outside of that formal charge. For example, we've learned about a lot of OER adoption that we would have otherwise been totally unaware of, which is really helpful for tracking cost savings and other impacts. We've also gotten to educate faculty who may have been unfamiliar before about what exactly OER is and what already exists for their discipline. And it's ultimately generated a number of specific requests to search for OER on behalf of those faculty members. So they may be more likely to consider it than they would have been without the interview. And relatedly, we also learned through this initiative about a new departmental program for them in which one or two faculty members would serve as coordinators for the largest courses and sequences in the department. And part of that responsibility is creating pages in our learning management system that lists textbooks and other materials that instructors might want to evaluate. So now we have an opportunity to make sure OER is included in those lists, and we wouldn't have known about the program if not for the interviews. So just to close out, what have we learned? My assumption was that it would be a useful way to narrow my focus for outreach, and that was definitely true. While I didn't neglect other outreach opportunities, I was able to avoid some distractions by honing in on just a few groups of faculty to try and have more impact within a smaller group. And I think that spreading out my efforts over multiple departments might not have yielded the same effect in the same time period. But I will say that doing this with 2 departments at a time was pretty hard. I probably would only do this with 1 department in my first semester if I did this again. I found myself focusing pretty naturally on 1 department at a time anyway, so I was kind of unintentionally halting outreach with 1 while I was working with the other. But the length of time, 1 semester, was about right in the other regards. Though some of my math interviews will continue to spill out over this summer, things have really naturally wrapped up as the semester came to a close. And I already mentioned that having a faculty champion served us really well, particularly in the math department. I think it would have been very difficult to get traction otherwise. But even outside of OER, having library champions more generally outside of OER was really helpful in both departments, because these people were willing to hear us out and make introductions to colleagues because they trusted their liaison librarian in particular, even if they didn't know much about OER or if they didn't use it themselves. And finally, I think that when I do this with another department, I might try to go beyond learning-based objectives and imagine a specific thing that I want to ask for or offer them. So maybe that looks like asking department chairs to encourage their faculty to submit an OER search request, or brainstorm with them about how to fit OER adoption or creation into their department's approach to faculty activity reports. Maybe it's something more targeted, like having the coordinators for their biggest courses evaluate available OER. But I do think that I'll do this again in the fall, and those are some approaches that I might take. So I want to stop there and make plenty of time for other folks, but I'm happy to answer questions when we get to Q&A, or you're always welcome to reach out to me to chat privately if you'd prefer. So thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. That was fantastic. I just really appreciate your practical approach and how you took a giant university like the University of Texas and made it seem possible to actually, get in there and figure some stuff out. I know how tricky that can be. So thanks for sharing. And our next speaker is going to be Lisa Lewis from Texas A&M Corpus Christi. Go ahead, Lisa.
Thanks, Leah, and thanks, Taylor, and Ashley as well. You guys are doing so much exciting stuff. It was great just to hear your stories and get ideas. So my name is Lisa. I'm from Texas A&M Corpus Christi, and I'm going to share a little bit of information with you guys today about a particular outreach program that I've done at my university. I'm going to share my screen real quick, hopefully, and hopefully you guys can see this, and I'm going to hit present. All right, and I've got it on the wrong screen, so I apologize. I'll be cheating over here to the left to look at my slides. So I'm going to be talking about working with faculty in a community of practice on open educational resources. And I'll start off with a little bit about where we got the idea to try this as an outreach strategy. Back in 2017, we first brought our OER program online, and we developed a task force at that time, which included faculty and staff and students. And we divided into 3 subcommittees and asked them to kind of generate ideas about what we should do to get this off the ground. And the faculty group included the person who's in charge of our Center for Faculty Excellence, which is the body on campus that runs communities of practice. And probably not surprisingly, they came back and said, you should do a community of practice on this for faculty. And so that was where it started. And because we already had a structure on our campus to support offering communities of practice, it seemed like low-hanging fruit. And I'm going to start my timer, and I apologize because I intended to do that and I didn't do it. So there we go. So that was where it began. And just very quickly, what I'm talking about when I say a community of practice is an engagement strategy you find in many different at many different universities for faculty to do professional development with other faculty. And this is a strategy that can have positive results, whether it involves their pedagogy in their classes, whether it involves just simply getting to know other faculty across campus, because these often feature people from many different disciplines, and also can lead to projects where they do research on the topic that you did because they get excited about it and they want to know more. Here's a definition I won't read, but I've highlighted a few things that I think are particularly important about this definition. They are almost always cross-disciplinary, and so that can be exciting. Actually, in our feedback from this most recent one that we did, that was called out specifically by a faculty member who said they loved being in a situation where they had an opportunity to work with other faculty that don't do what they do, or they do what they do, but they do it differently, so that was pretty cool. It's collaborative, and it's also a situation where they're learning from each other, and that creates a very engaged atmosphere. And learning from each other, I think, is important because OER can still be kind of a delicate topic on some campuses. There are some faculty that may be suspicious and maybe even verging over into the hostile end of the spectrum when it comes to OER. So a faculty member, particularly a junior faculty member, may feel unsafe talking about OER or exploring OER in other situations. But hey, here they're in a community with other faculty who have expressed the same interest and who are there to learn the same things they are. And so it does kind of create a safe space for that learning to occur in collaboration with other faculty. So what do we cover in our community of practice? This is a basic outline. What is open? You know, that's a big, that's a big, very foundational concept that if a faculty member hasn't worked in this realm before, they really need to spend some time talking about that, reading about that, learning it. And then, of course, we talk about open licensing and how that's different from other types of licensing and how that relates to copyright. Open pedagogy or open educational practices is something we cover. And we also talk about finding OER and integrating OER into their classes, as well as a little bit on creating OER as well. And although we did it in the first year, we did implement a textbook for the most recent 2 times we've done this, textbook, quote unquote. We use Abby Elder's OER Starter Kit from Iowa State University. It's a wonderful, wonderful synopsis of all things open, and it worked really well. It has a single authorial voice. It's got lots of embedded media, so it's interesting. And then a workbook was added to it, kind of as a layer on top of it by City University of New York folks. And that workbook is great. And we actually drew some discussion questions and stuff like that from the exercises in the workbook. So I really, really recommend the OER Starter Kit by Abby Elder and the companion workbook. They're great. So that's the content and what we tried to cover. And then we've settled on pretty much like within a semester, we do 6 meetings, one of which is a presentation meeting. So really just 5 meetings spread out. Usually they're every other week. So that gives you an idea of how long. Our first one was a year long, and we decided not to try to do that again. We just do the semester long experience now. So that content fits very well into that sort of 5-week framework. Some sample faculty projects are here on this slide. It's been very exciting to see what the faculty do with this. They all have to do a project, and they get to experiment not just with using OER, but also with using open pedagogy approaches. And it's just really fun to see what they do with it. So there's just a list there of some things that the faculty have done. And that's all I was going to present to you about today. However, I will be happy to take questions when we get to the end. And then I did want to draw attention to this toolkit, because I don't have a whole lot of time to talk about all the details of the faculty community of practice. But I was a Spark Open Education Fellow a couple of years ago, and my capstone project, actually it was last year, my capstone project was on how to do faculty communities of practice. And I put together a LibGuide that I kind of called a toolkit. And it really covers all of the details, all of the crazy stuff that we do, as well as some stuff that I've read about from other institutions. And so it's I think a good resource if this is something you're interested in doing and you would just sort of like to know more about the nitty-gritty and the nuts and bolts and all of that. Check out my toolkit, and I can, once I'm out of here, I'd be glad to put that address also into the chat so that you guys can get a look. All right, so that's it for me. Thank you.
That was great, Lisa. Thanks so much. And yes, please do share that link in chat, because I would really like to see that toolkit myself. And thanks for presenting, especially on such a niche but a very important piece of it, which is that faculty piece, and getting faculty to collaborate with libraries and with each other. It's I'm really excited to see your toolkit. Thank you so much. Okay, our second to last speaker today is Deanne Ivy with UT San Antonio. Go ahead, Deanne.
First, unmute myself. I actually have a mixture of resources to share with you guys today. And I kept this very informal and casual, and I just wanted to show you some of the practical things we're using at UTSA, and talk a little bit about some of the things we've been working on. And I do have a tendency to go over, so let me also start my timer. And I just, so appreciate being able to share what we're doing at UTSA. And it's so exciting to hear what the other ambassadors are working on too. Just learning a lot today from this conversation. Some of the things that we've worked on this semester are promotions related to Open Education Week. And then also related to our grant program, we have a grant program that's been running for 5 years now. Doesn't seem like it's been that long, but this is our fifth year to actually award grants to faculty at UTSA. And so one of the things that we really were proud of this semester in particular, also with all of the challenges in front of us too, with being remote, is having really strong Open Ed Week activities. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what we did with our Student Government Association. We were very, very lucky to have such engaged leadership with SGA this spring. Just so proud of that. And it looks like that's going to continue into next year. We're already, talking about some activities for next fall. And so I'm really excited about that. But one of the things that we worked on, and so this might seem a little bit more like student outreach, but actually what we did, we reached out to Student Government Association and we provided them with some templates for post, just to make it as easy as possible for them. Here are some templates. And I actually talked a little bit with Ashley too. We had some one-on-one emails going back and forth about some of the things that we were planning for Open Education Week. But the goal was to get students involved, of course, and posting to their Instagram about their experience with textbooks. Unfortunately, we didn't get a lot of stories that were shared out, but we were just so proud to be able to have the engagement with SGA and to be able to reshare that through the library account too. I think that, it's something that our faculty tend to follow us on Twitter. So we also had a lot of templates that we had set up for promoting the grants. Not only that, but talking a little bit about how our grant program has impacted the students and really making that known, some of the ways that it's helped them. So we're going to be coming up with, I think, like templates for the future to help save us a little bit of time in coming Open Ed Week events. And, whenever we promote the grants, we'll be able to have those to just pull from at any point. That's kind of our plan. And then the goal is to, yes, we are working with SGA, but this messaging, it goes out to faculty, and primarily faculty follow us through our library Twitter account. So it's one other way to kind of get the word out about how our faculty are helping students that are awarded through the grant program, and those that are just kind of taking it upon themselves to explore OER too without the incentive of a grant. So this is an example of our SGA Instagram post. We also had some posts on our library Twitter, so you can see a little bit of what we did here. One of the things that I think we're planning on doing, because some of the photos that we have with students are a little bit older, and we're going to probably have our peer coaches in the library help us with this in the future. I think next year we're going to do that just to kind of keep it fresh. We've reused these a few times, and so we want to kind of keep it fresh, interesting, and engaging. So have some new photos of new students talking about their experience. And likely we'll have some of our peer coaches in the library that have taken a class using OER too. So this is one of the things that we worked on. One of the things I'm working on too, and I do apologize, you guys are going to see a variety of things today, and let me see how much time I have. Got about 7 minutes. We are going to be working on sharing metrics on our website. Well, one of the things I'm looking at, in fact, I did a lot of work last week to look at restructuring our website. It's been something that I haven't had as much time to devote to with all of the other things OER related on campus. But I realized that we've kind of updated as we have time. And it's one of those things where I need to do like a more holistic, let's see what needs to be changed here, because I think I need to do some refreshing across the board, across the website. But I started looking at some of the metrics through our grant program. And I know that I was really excited to hear, I was in the OER state leaders meeting, just kind of listening in last Friday. And it sounds like, I know that the OEN has had a metrics dashboard that is available and may be able to help with some of these things. But for now, I'm putting together just pivot tables in Excel. It's very kind of simple, but I think once I get it set up, we can just kind of add to it every time we award more grants. And it will allow us to see who's adopting across colleges, who's adopting across departments. And I think it will be a way for us to showcase that on our website and really just feature that like kind of at a higher level, at the department level, at the college level. So I'm excited about that. This is the most fleshed out example that I could show you. I'm going to be working on the charts for some of the other areas. I think one of the things that SGA asks a lot about is they want to know who's adopting. And in fact, we did get feedback from the UT System Student Advisory Council just last week, and they were recommending. So I was very excited to hear. It's perfect timing because I've been working on putting this together. They recognize there's a need for enhanced data collection and analysis with regard to OER. They are recommending that an end of course survey to assess student utilization and satisfaction is distributed. We already do that, so we were proud to say we already do that, but they had some other recommendations and questions that they wanted us to fold into our survey. And I do think we're actually covering most of these, but it was so interesting to hear that students were excited to hear about, how this is impacting our UTSA students, and not just UTSA students. This was a UT System recommendation. Their questions: did students use the OER, and if so, how often? How effective, high quality did students find the OER, and did the OER result in meaningful cost savings for the students? Again, perfect timing, because this is something that we can put on our website. We know that students are interested in, and I'm thinking about probably having like a student section on our site. I think that would be a really strong thing to do, and something that we could show our SGA leaders whenever we're meeting with them, and any of the officers that are in the meetings too. I think it'll be a great thing to do. I'm going to pop over to our website really quickly. So I mentioned we are revamping it. We're kind of cleaning up a little bit, updating some information. One of the things I would like to show you is we haven't been promoting this as much heavily because this page was just published within the last 3 weeks, but we're starting to work a lot more with our campus partners. And so with regard to affordable textbook reporting, the registrar's office, the bookstore, but we want to showcase those to our faculty, and not, it's not just the library that is supporting this. A lot of different divisions on campus, including student government. And I think showcasing that SGA's engagement with OER is really important when talking with faculty. And I also think it's a really great way, like with our affordable textbook reporting form, we did work with SGA to come up with a cost threshold for that. And I think that's been a really good thing. And it's been a strong way to present that to faculty too. And they are like, okay, that makes sense. So glad that you're working with SGA, but also knowing that that is coming from the students and they're helping guide where this goes. But it talks about the library and how we support faculty overall with OER adoption, some of the things that we do. And then academic innovation, we're starting to partner with them a whole lot more now that we have access to press books. So some of the things that they can assist faculty with, how SGA helps support OER on campus, that level of involvement, what the registrar does, and then the bookstore as well. And then advising, of course, helps let students know about the low-cost textbook filter that we have in our course search. So again, I'm meeting with our OER grant recipients this year and showing them these resources, and mentioning that we're working more closely with academic innovation. So as they want to use Pressbooks, integrating that into their Blackboard course, knowing that we're working together to help them out with that, I think is a really nice message. I have a minute left, it looks like. Let me see here. One of the things that we're also working on too, and I do apologize because I meant to pull up the example of this. This is actually something through our strategic collections task force, but we're going to be putting together some messaging for faculty for this fall, kind of explaining the dilemma with textbooks and getting access to textbooks at the institutional level. Not only that, but streaming the video, because we do have a lot of misunderstandings about how, if the library can even provide access to those things, which as you know, commercial textbooks do not make their publishers do not make their books available institutionally. And so faculty often do not understand that. And so we're going to fold in some messaging, not only about that, but about, hey, OER is a great resource as well. We did this last fall as well. We reached out, and in fact, actually we did it in the summer, talking about how OER was just a really great it was a really great time to integrate OER in some ways, although it's additional work, right? But with the online learning environment, just considering that, their students have immediate access and the challenges that we sometimes have with e-resources through the library. OER, we don't have those challenges. And so we did send out messaging last summer to faculty about that and integrated that messaging onto our live guides too at UTSA. And I am right at time. So thank you for letting me share what's going on at UTSA.
Deanne, thank you so much. Gosh, you have so much exciting stuff going on. And it made me remember one other thing I heard about recently. I'm going to paste a link in chat here in Zoom, but that UTSA secured a really generous donation to support your Adopt a Textbook program, and that there's a lot of support even outside of the library as faculty and students. And so people really care about this issue. And so just congratulations on all this amazing work. And thanks so much for sharing that with us, Deanne. Okay, our last speaker today, last but not least, Amanda Zarang from Texas Women's University is our final speaker today.
Great, thank you. Is everything looking good, guys? I'm going to apologize before I begin. My internet has been really super glitchy this morning, of course. So y'all let me know if everything goes south, but I'm going to try to get as far as I can get. My name is Amanda Zarang. I'm the manager of digital services at Texas Women's University. So with 15,000 students, we are the largest public university predominantly serving women. We are very proud of being #1 in a couple things. So we are #1 in terms of ethnic diversity in Texas, and we are #1 in terms of serving students with children in Texas. So our unique student demographics serve as the largest, I think, most important impetus for campus collaboration and support of faculty course redesigns and to include OER. So for my brief presentation, I'm going to focus on one, our most recent and fingers crossed, hopefully most successful outreach strategy at TWU. So this spring, we opened our 3rd call for applicants for course redesign to include OER. So this year is a bit different in many ways, but in terms of our OER outreach, we opened the call to include all instructors, not just those teaching core curriculum courses. And we got the word out by sending an email to all faculty and staff. So we are a very small university and thankfully are able to do that. And it worked. It worked so well, it went bad, So it worked, and we were able to support and award 17 faculty members who will transition 24 courses over this summer. So this is where the team comes in. Our OER initiative is a partnership between the library, the Teaching and Learning with Technology, and also our Center for Faculty Excellence. So in the past, I included 2 pictures from previous panel discussions and celebrations. In the past, we had 4 to 5 faculty members interested in a course redesign. So this shocking increase kind of threw us for a loop. But the silver lining is we now have this team support that we didn't have in the past. So for the first time ever, we will have an instructional designer, the faculty member, me, and also a librarian partner to fully and completely support faculty. And I'll tell you what, they love hearing the word team. We get emails, hey team, when can we meet team? So it's really, really neat and different, and it's wonderful to have that support from the librarians on campus. So challenges, as I sort of alluded to earlier in kind of my shaky voice, but timing and teams, right? So it's a lessons learned situation for me. I expected the faculty interest to sort of remain the same and prepared for that. So while it's a wonderful surprise, the number of faculty, it's been a challenge for me to coordinate that number and the team members and scheduling and project management, and also to do all that and plan for it to be completed over the summer. And also, you know, you don't know what you don't know. And while we are really deeply involved in the world of OER, for many faculty and many librarians, this is very new to them. And so getting over that challenge has been a lessons learned for me. So as far as benefits, timing, team, and understanding OER, all projects will be completed by the end of the summer. We have a team supporting the faculty members. And my hope is that even more people will have a better understanding of OER at TWU. So thank you. I'm happy also to answer questions at the end, and thank you guys.
That's great. Thanks so much, Amanda. And yeah, we kind of joked about that at our last OER ambassadors meeting, that you kind of had a good problem, but it was going to be a ton of work for you to now manage all those grants. So congratulations, but yeah, I hear what you're saying there. Well, that's it for our planned presentations today. And so anyone who's here in Zoom and Huva, and again, thanks for your patience. I'm still kind of sidebar conversing with tech support. We don't know what's going on with the black screen or not being able to see things in Huva. So please come on over to Zoom. There's a link in the chat in Huva in case you aren't able to see the screen. Again, we are recording this, so if you missed some presentations from earlier, you're welcome to go back later on and check those out. But yeah, so anyone who's here, you're welcome to turn on your cameras. If you have questions, please drop them into chat or unmute yourself and ask our presenters. I also want to open up the floor. Either, again, you can show yourself on camera and speak, and or drop in chat if you have a great outreach tactic that you'd like to share. We really love being able to learn from each other and borrow each other's ideas. And so I'd love to hear from you all. I'm going to check in Huva too to see if there's anyone chatting in there. And, you know, actually, I was thinking of the faculty panel that you hosted at UT Austin last week. And I was able to attend and help moderate that. And I thought that your faculty did such a beautiful job talking about their values and the open pedagogy and how that kind of helps them be better teachers. And also that it's, you know, student affordability for textbooks is something that we focus on because it's so critical, but how publishing allows faculty to bring more of themselves and their personal lives even into their work. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you organize that.
Yeah, sure. So as Leah mentioned, Friday last week, we had a faculty panel at UT Austin. Our theme was around implementing open education practices and the many different forms that could take, though all of our three faculty presenters did kind of center their discussions around OER and how they use that in their classrooms or co-create it with students. But it came together in a couple of different ways. We'd had similar faculty panels in the past, and I bet that a lot of you have as well. Interestingly, one of the panelists we had, maybe it's the first time it's happened, they found me by Googling OER at UT because they just kind of realized that that was a thing that they were doing, but had never known to call their work that. So as they got in touch with me rather earlier in the spring semester, and what they shared with me was this collection of media ethics case studies that they'd been creating with their students, or really that their students had been creating, that they'd been providing editing support for. And it was really amazing. So I ended up consulting with them on open licensing to make it truly open, because it hadn't been previously, though that was always their intent. So honestly, part of it came about because I thought this is such a cool project and I want an excuse for this faculty member to get to show it off. But in other cases, the faculty that we reach out to get involved in these panels, we select them specifically because they're faculty members who want to make open a big part of their professional brand, whether that's because they've created their own OER or they've made adaptations to it, or they're really like warriors for textbook affordability and student success. That tends to be how we identify faculty, or how we have recently identified faculty panelists, because there are so many wonderful examples to choose from. We try to find those who we hope will benefit from it just as much as we're benefiting from their availability and willingness to speak for us. So that was a little bit about how it came together. But Leah, if there's anything you want to add to this, Leah is underplaying her role. She was very much involved in organizing this as well. And she was a fabulous moderator, which none of you will be surprised to hear.
Thanks, Ashley. It was so fun, and I get really excited about OER. I get really excited about open pedagogy, and to see some of the a term you use, seeing OER in the wild, that I hadn't had a chance to see before. And the professors put a lot of care and thought and creativity and work into teaching, and that always is inspiring. It certainly doesn't seem like they just clock in and clock out during the day. So, and one of the things we talked about, oh, Denise, I see your question. And one of the things I wanted to put out to the group here, our speakers and our guests today, is any thoughts you have around promotion and tenure. I know that a lot of faculty there are a lot of challenges around getting faculty to adopt and adapt and create OER. But one of the challenges is that they're not sure, if it's going to be well received when they mention this on their CVs, that they're publishing, or even just open education practices in general. Not sure that that's always well received. So I wanted to hear what people thought about that. Do any of our speakers have any tips on that or run into that problem?
This is Lisa. I've definitely run into the problem to the extent of hearing faculty say they are concerned about it, and it comes up in the faculty communities of practice when we discuss. There are conversations starting to bubble around on my campus about maybe going through faculty senate to get a resolution saying that this should be, considered in, because each of our colleges has their own faculty handbook, which contains a lot of details about what is good and what is not so good, and when looking at promotion and tenure. And the idea is to get each of those discrete documents to say something about the value of creating and adopting OER and open educational practices in the classroom too. But it's just a conversation at this point.
Like Lisa, it's more just conversations, and kind of pulling into Denise's question, this might help answer it a little, at least for WT. It's just been a conversation as far as tenure and promotion. We do have some department heads across campus who are recognizing their faculty's work and making appropriate things to award these faculty for their hard work, right? And although it's nothing official in the faculty handbook or anything like that. And as far as Denise's question goes, with regards to working it from the administration top down, that was originally my approach. I thought that would be something, obviously, if it came from the top, then everybody's on board. But what I realized in my time at WT, that necessarily wouldn't work for me. That would not work for WT here at the present moment. And obviously that might be different of the other institutions. But because we are in the A&M system, A&M's they're already trying, they're already working from the top. So anything that I did would just be kind of, we're going at the same goal, whereas they're going here, I could be coming here as far as really connecting with the faculty, because I don't want to put all my focus within the top down, because who am I, librarian, to make those changes? So I can be there for the support and the education. But again, with the tenure promotion, I think that is current battle that everyone is dealing with. And if anybody else has anything, obviously ambassadors, but participants as well, I would love to hear it.
Yeah, Deanne, please go ahead. Love to hear your thoughts on this too.
Yeah, I mean, kind of what we've done at UTSA is, of course, offering grants through the grant program, but then, featuring those faculty and recognizing that work with a faculty profile, textbook hero profile on our website. I would really like to go deeper into that. With our affordable textbook reporting form, I think there's a lot of opportunity to expand this, at least start with going a little bit higher, like we're getting reports from faculty that are doing the work now through that form. So maybe every year we could send a letter to their department chair from the library dean and leadership, teaching and learning services as well, kind of partner on that, recognizing that around, annual review time. That's what I have in my head kind of as a next step. I did see a really awesome example at the Open Education Conference back in 2018, and it was presented by Dr. Frieden from Pittsburgh State University in Kansas, sorry. She actually provided language, and actually if you Google, I think you can find this on their website. It's CC licensed too. She has language that she has shared where they have incorporated that into their P&T process. And she has the document that she also shared the document during that presentation too. And I followed up with her later, immediately when I got back from Open Ed, and just asked if she could share that. She got back right away with me. I still have that. I don't know that we're at that stage at UTSA yet. I don't know when would be the right time to go about doing that. And of course it would need to come from our library dean in his meetings with the provost, I think. But I think just from my experience at UTSA, working with our textbook heroes and showcasing their work, it gets other faculty on board. I think it's a good way to do it, and it's a positive way to do it. And I think talking with students about their positive experiences using OER, let's showcase the positive. I think that will get faculty on board as well, but it's I don't know that there's a right or wrong way to go about it. We've kind of worked from the bottom up. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing that, Deanne. I'm really glad you did. Is there any other thoughts from either our ambassadors or folks in the audience who want to talk a little bit about promotion and tenure tips? I also want to make sure we get to Denise's question. And Denise, I'm really glad you, Ashley, were you going to say something about P&T?
I can add only a little bit to it. Like
it.
everybody else who's chimed in, it's really conversation stage for the most part at UT Austin. One interesting thing that that is happening for us though is kind of actually echoing what Deanne mentioned, more of a from the bottom up conversation. One of our faculty champions is really driving change within her department, where change is a lot easier to make than it is at the top level of tenure and promotion guidelines, at least at UT Austin. Each of our departments and colleges has a little bit of control over how those guidelines are interpreted and enacted and what types of examples they might provide to their faculty to make the case. So she met with her department chair to ask pretty blunt questions about how OER activities could be reflected in faculty activity reports or tenure and promotion. And they had a pretty productive conversation where the department chair was able to express some of their concerns and objections and get those addressed. And I helped her with addressing some of those objections on the back end. But now they're communicating within their department a little bit more openly about what type of evidence, for example, would be required if they did want to try to get credit for materials that they'd created, applied open licenses to, and shared. So it's really just a start, but I'm finding that change is a lot easier at smaller levels of administration.
Indeed. Well, thanks. I'm really glad you shared that, Ashley. And so, yeah, Denise, we're going to get back with your question now. So you say, I'm wondering if y'all have ideas about how to begin the OER conversation if your campus has not really used it before. And like, yeah, we've been there for sure. You picked the right group to ask. Do you begin with getting faculty on board, begin with administration to get buy-in from the top, work with both at the same time, all of the above? I would love it. You know, that's anyone here, but I'd sure love to hear from our ambassadors what you think about Denise's question.
Leah and Denise, I'm happy to give our perspective from TWU, and it may be unusual for this ambassadors group because our institution is quite small in comparison to the others. So we did it differently than what everyone else spoke to, in that we started at the top. So our meetings occurred with me and our dean and our provost. And then at one point, the same group and adding in the chancellor to explain what it is. They are really very interested in how the data that shows it affects retention, particularly for the demographics that TWU has, and tying it into the coordinating board's 60 by 30 initiative to reduce debt upon graduation. So those big, broad initiatives that they are interested in at that high level, we were able to provide data that other institutions had used to support those. And it was, it worked really well for us. Again, we're really small, so that helped really nicely when we're speaking with faculty to say, oh yeah, you know, Chancellor Phaeton really is on board with the OER. She did this video for us. So they feel like they are supported automatically by their chair and by their dean, which they are. And our institution is so small that the chancellor knows all the faculty. So she knows that, you know, Dr. Ahmed is doing this for her students. So it really helped for us to start at the top. And we could kind of name drop, right? When you're talking to your faculty about how they could be supported. We don't have, kind of circling back, we don't have a formal way of including this in tenure and promotion, but what they do know, what faculty do know, is that what they are doing is valued. So, and I think that's really helpful in bringing others to the table also.
Agreed. Anyone else want to chime in on sort of how do you get started? Lisa, it looks like your hand was raised.
Sorry, Taylor, do you want to go? Just real quickly, I can say at my institution, it was my dean that did it. There really wasn't anything going on, but Dr. Rudowski was just like, this is something that has to happen. Nobody is talking about it, but it really needs to happen. And so she sort of started that, but then we almost immediately put together that task force that I mentioned when I was describing our program. And that was a big cross section and brought a lot of people together to the table. And it really got a lot of excitement going and kind of created a nucleus, right, of people who cared about it and who knew what it was, and also who were willing to generate their ideas. And I think the other thing that we leveraged was the course marking requirement that the legislature passed several years ago now, and we are still struggling to implement that, but I think we're almost there. But so if you haven't done that yet, that can be kind of a stick. You know, there's carrots and then there's sticks. Well, you know, legislative requirements and being in compliance can be a motivator, you know, for some people who might not otherwise be very interested, because it leads to a whole cascade of things, right? If you're going to implement it, then you need to know who's using it. So then you have to start having a bigger conversation on campus to try to look under the rocks and find the faculty who are using them already. And then, you know, it just started, I don't know, it kind of a I guess a cascade for us of different pieces kind of coming together when we did that. So And if anybody's not familiar with that requirement, I can put a link to the legislation too in the chat box for that. But that was a talking point for sure that we used to say why you need to know about this.
Makes sense. And yeah, I'd love to get a link there. I linked to a toolkit that UT Arlington has around course markings, and actually keep an eye on this group here because we're going to work on something along these lines and share out with all of our TDL members too. Taylor, what were you going to say?
So I was going to talk a little bit about how I started getting this OER rolling on campus. When I got into this position, an OER working group was already formed, and there wasn't a lot of progress within this group. Obviously, there were really great discussions. So when I came in, it was my job to make something of all of this. So what I wanted to do was I needed to know who was using OER on our campus. Before I even started talking to anybody, I needed to know what I was walking into, right? And at the time, doing a survey was not an option. So obviously, I don't know if I recommend this, though I ended up getting some really great data from this. I went and started pulling data from the faculty syllabi, since they were all made public. Obviously, this might be an extraordinarily big project for bigger universities. So fortunately, WT is a little bit smaller, so I was able to kind of manage that. So I collected all the data of what they were requiring students to have, what materials were required, what were suggested, what were optional, and then I would document how much that particular material cost. Was it a traditional textbook or was it a library resource? All of these different data points that then helped me recognize who were my potential OER people or who were already using OER and nobody knew about it. And so from that, I got a really great idea of what the campus looked like. So then I started working with an education faculty member, and I actually received my bachelor's degree at this university. So I had already had that connection. So it made it super easy to be like, hey, did you know that these resources are out here that are really similar to the textbook that you're using? And so it ended up being a really cool conversation that led into them completely getting rid of their textbooks. And so then since then, like I said earlier, it ended up being word of mouth. Obviously, I don't have anything big program going on. And at this stage, I don't know if I could handle a lot of faculty coming to me, because I think I've got 5 going on right now that require some attention. And but anyway, so it started out really small. And so that's how it kind of came to be here at WT. Obviously, there's a lot of more moving parts into it, but those are some big key points that helped me kind of get my footing here on campus.
Yeah, is this the giant spreadsheet, Taylor?
Yes,
the giant spreadsheet
yes.
was your best friend. Yeah, I remember looking that over with you and being really impressed with just the tenacity of your data gathering. So way to go on that. Anyone else have thoughts on just where to begin before we move on to a couple other questions that we have, one from Tracy and one from Carolyn? Any other thoughts on just getting started? Well, y'all are welcome to put anything in chat if you want, or we can come back to this question later, but let's move on to a question from Tracy. Have any of your libraries been able to include OER in institutional KPIs? And KPI stands for key performance indicator, key performance indicator, and those are usually part of strategic plans. Have any of your libraries been able to include OER in your key performance indicators and/or strategic plans?
I can speak a little bit about this, although I can say at UTSA it's not explicitly stated. We have it more, of course, broadly falling under student success, and that it also falls under that within our UTSA library's strategic plan as well. So, but as an official metric, I'm not aware that it is. We do, however, provide numbers to the provost. Our dean meets with the provost regularly and provides, updates on our grant program and adoptions and all of that. And of course, now reports through our affordable textbook reporting form can be folded into that conversation as well. But no, I would love to be able to do that, but it's just not explicitly stated there at UTSA.
Fair enough. Anyone else have thoughts? Lisa, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, we're doing a strategic plan right now for the library. And the university strategic plan is on the horizon as well. We jumped the gun because we wanted to do ours in the summer. And I'm sure we'll be flexing it to match the universities, but we didn't want to wait. So we've been working on our strategic plan, and I'm chairing the committee. And so, gosh, I have a feeling there'll be something in there about OER. But I don't know yet what form that will take, or at what level in the strategic plan. Right now, we're really looking at a strategic framework. And it may or may not be called out at that level, but it may be called out in the more operational goals that fall under. And student experience is one of our frames that we're probably going to be sticking with. And there's another one related to teaching and learning. And so I see lots of places where we could plug it in for sure.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, and with great power comes great responsibility, Lisa. So, get those 3 letters in that strategic plan. That's great though. And so Amanda and Ashley commented in chat. Anyone else here today have OER baked into your strategic plan that you're actually held accountable to your students and other campus stakeholders? Would love to hear from you. We have about 15 minutes left. We are ending around 1:30. And so I do want to get to one more really great question. This one is from Carolyn, who has a department that wants to develop an OER for an upper level course where the textbook is used by programs across the United States, but it's out of date and the author is retiring. Oh, I love the drama you set up here. It's so good. So this is a narrow topic, not a core course, and they're looking for a grant to pay their instructional faculty to develop the OER over the summer. Any ideas or suggestions?
I don't have a specific recommendation, but mostly I wanted to commiserate because I feel like this is the case that I run into every time a faculty member is really interested in some kind of incentive. It's never a core course, so it doesn't make sense to recommend THECB's grant program to them. The only other recommendation that I've heard, especially from our liaison librarians, is to look at professional organizations or associations that might relate to the discipline that they're in and see if they offer funding for this. Because if somebody is willing to develop an openly licensed text, it could be something for them. But that's really the only possible piece of advice I have, though I haven't been successful in pursuing that yet.
Anyone else run into this problem?
I wouldn't say I've run into that specific problem, but the issue, there seems to be sort of a divide between the materials being developed for the core courses, which for very good reasons, right? You want to get your biggest bang for the buck. But then faculty that really, really, really want to take advantage of this momentum with OER for other courses, higher level courses with smaller enrollments, and even graduate level courses, and having difficulty finding in my faculty community of practice, that's something that we have faculty run into a lot when they're doing their projects for the semester. They come in and they think I'm going to do for this course, and then they're struggling, to find for that particular course, and often they have to find some kind of a pivot. So I would love to see funding out there for this kind of a project, because that sounds ideal. I mean, that's something that is still in use, actively out there in the world. It doesn't sound like they're going to have a problem with copyright issues. I mean, it just sounds really a great opportunity, you know, to serve a large group of people, but just not one of those core courses with hundreds of students, you know, in it every semester. So.
Leah, I was going to suggest the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board as well, the Oer Grants. Another maybe tactic to suggest is consulting with your library. I know for us, we have been in the works of creating a grant program or stipend program of some sorts that obviously it would not be the whole entire amount, but at least it could be something to help get them started or anything like that. But I know at least for here at our institution and library, we are definitely open to assisting in all areas. Of course, the focus would be core, but you know, when you have projects like this that could really be beneficial, I mean, any project could be beneficial, but yeah, so maybe the library or any other campus partners, maybe taking it to your provost. I don't know. That's just a few thoughts, but definitely the THECB people.
Yeah, agreed. And, you know, spoken by a woman who helped faculty get a THECB grant. So yeah, absolutely. Go visit the library is always excellent advice. And I do want to say, okay, so Deanne, you had your hand up. I'm so sorry if I missed you earlier. Please go ahead.
No, it's okay. I just really backing up what the others have shared too. With our grant program at UTSA, we do award to all classes. And we also know that, you know, there are going to be, we do usually get, you know, upper level undergrad, more specialized classes apply in grad classes. And we do have, of course, lower impact with those, but we still award them. I think it helps build goodwill. And I guess, you know, I guess the first step, right, would be, could we allocate a little bit of funding for, you know, faculty, maybe smaller grant amounts? We award $1,000 to our individual grant applications, no matter what, you know, level of course they are, they still get awarded the same amount. For our group applications, those are, we do look at, you know, the rankings and number of students. We look at all of that very carefully as the grant applications are coming in, the textbook cost, and we go over it very much with a fine-tooth comb. But I think the first step would be maybe offering really, it could be many grants, and give them some kind of an award for doing the work. I think that might be a good way of going about it. And I think what Taylor said is spot on, and Ashley and the others, that, you know, there's oftentimes some really great like digital rights management free ebooks that can be used for those courses through Wiley, Science Direct. You know, we have a great collection, a really rich online collection at UTSA. And so I think a lot of times those fit the needs of those more specialized classes. And I think the great thing too, it builds goodwill. If that faculty member is ever teaching a core class, then maybe they'll, you know, try it out in that class as well. So I think it's building goodwill. And I apologize for the noise outside. I'll mute myself now.
It's okay. I wasn't sure if it was your dog Roxy or what, but it's okay. And Lisa, I see your hand is still up. Is that just kind of up from before? We're good. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing anybody. And I'm looking through chat, and I think we've covered all the questions that I could see. So please do speak up or point me to your question if I've missed it. But I do want to also say, wow, we're almost done. Like this is, time has just flown during this meeting. I can't believe that we've spent almost 90 minutes together. So before you all start peeling off, because I know some of you may want to have, you know, like lunch before your next session, I do want to just thank everyone for joining us today. I say I get to, because, you know, this is my job, but I get to hang out with these people on a regular basis. And these TDL OER ambassadors, as you've seen today, are just some of the best people I get to work with. They're so fun and generous with their time and energy and creativity and ideas. And so please do keep in touch with TDL, and we have a meeting coming up that we need to reschedule, but we're going to send out an update. I have some links here. I want to invite everyone to subscribe to, well, first our TDL's mailing list. We have an email list. We also have an OER email list, and I put a link to that, and you can subscribe to that too if you're interested. And that's how we'll let you know about upcoming member-wide meetings where we can go further down in the weeds. We pick more specific topics for those meetings, but they also just turn into kind of free-for-all conversation, and anyone's welcome to attend. I also want to point you to a couple more things. So we have a few posters that may be of interest to you. Our poster presentations are in Whova on the left-hand side. You should be able to navigate down to the posters section. And there are a few here that I would love to share with you. And we also have a poster scavenger hunt with some really great prizes. So I'd really love to see you check out those posters and more. Finally, one last thing as a favor, and hang on to this link. I might try to start a community board around this, but TDL is looking to gauge interest in forming a new member group. And actually it would be open to non-members alike. So for those of you who are not members of TDL, you would be welcome to join too. We're looking to form a new member group around research integrity. And this is building on the success of our research integrity workshop series that we had back in February. We have a survey that we'd love for everyone to take and let us know if you're interested in that. And I know there are folks here who OER is just one component of your day-to-day life. And so you may have other duties that you need to work on. So we wanted to share this with you while I had you here. Anything else that anyone would like to share before we wrap things up today? Well, y'all are fabulous, and I really appreciate you presenters sharing your work at today's Birds of a Feather meeting. Good luck with your other presentations at TCDL. I know most of you are presenting again, and thanks to everyone who joined us here today, and especially for your patience while we had Whova and Zoom fighting with each other. We're going to try to figure out what caused that so we don't have to put up with that again. So, but thanks for your patience. All right, y'all. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
See you soon.